Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of the Hindu news analysis dated 18th December 2024. To make the discussion very comprehensive and to address all of your current affairs requirements, in today's discussion, I've taken just 13 articles. Yes, you heard it right, just 13 articles. The articles mainly from Hindu newspaper, but in addition to that, I've taken articles from Indian Express, Business Line and Mint newspaper. Now again, reiterating, the only objective is to make this a one-stop destination for all of your current affairs requirements. If you like this initiative, do hit the like button. And if you yet to subscribe to our channel, kindly do it right now. Before I start the discussion, I just want to make a very simple announcement. I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of National Education Policy 2020. For all the civil service aspirants, that is one of the very important areas that you must focus and understand. The National Education Policy 2020 says, right way for improving the learnings of the students is multiple assessments. In a nutshell, it says the students will have to be conducted or will have to go through multiple and different types of tests so that you understand what is the level of learning, and you can also do the course correction in order to have better learning levels of the students. We at Unacademy believe in this, and that's a reason once you join the course, let's say you become a student, a subscriber of English courses, on weekly basis, there will be a test. Not just MCQs, but also questions where you're supposed to write descriptive answers. Because once you write the test, you will understand what is the level of learning, what is the course correction that you need to have. So to become a subscriber, you can either purchase a subscription course of 9 months. In addition to these 9 months, we will provide a free extension of another 9 months. The same thing is applicable for 12 and 18 months courses as well. You will get access to English, Hindi and bilingual online classes. You will get access to multiple prelims as well as mains test series. And not to forget, you will also get access to our mentorship services. If you are interested, please do check out the details in the description provided below. Second important point, many of you have gone through the comments in my earlier videos, have kept on asking for PDF. The PDF of the classroom, or let's say the PPT that I'm using right now. Either you can join the Telegram channel, our Telegram channel, or you can join my Telegram channel. You will get the PDF of this lecture after the class is over there. Now let me start the discussion. The first very important article is regarding universal health care coverage. The 12th of December every year, remember this, the 12th of December is celebrated as International Health Care Day. And in that particular context, in today's newspaper, Hindu newspaper, there is an article regarding the challenges of universal health care coverage. Now, just to make the discussion comprehensive, in addition to this article, I've also taken one more article that is again an editorial or the comment section from the Indian Express newspaper. It also talks about the healthcare, what are the problems, what are the issues, and how do we make it much more responsive. Now, what are the important points? Let's start. The problem in case of India regarding healthcare, there are multiple issues. As per the National Family Health Survey, NFHS, as per NFHS for the year 2019 and 2021, please understand these are some of the observations that are provided. Point number one, in case of India, more than half of the population, whenever they have fallen sick, they did not approach government healthcare, rather they approached private sector healthcare. that is more than 50% of the population, when they have fallen sick, they did not use the government healthcare facilities. This is very important. Please make a note of this. Point number 2, more than 50% of India's population, right? More than 50% of India's population is, or around 50% of India's population is covered in the healthcare coverage either provided by the government or by themselves. They have opted for a healthcare coverage or the government has provided the coverage. So around 50% of the population is covered under one or the other types of healthcare coverages. Point number 3, more than 60% of the women, when they were inquired about the healthcare coverages, have stated that at one or the other points of time when they fell sick and they went to get or seek, let's say, medical assistance, they faced multiple issues. That is, it was very difficult for them to get access to healthcare. Access to healthcare is a problem according to the survey that was conducted. And point number 4, very, very important. In case of India, the out-of-the-pocket expenditure when you fall sick, when you get healthcare access is very, very high. I'll repeat this statement. Out-of-the-pocket expenditure is very, very high. According to the survey, around 49% of the population, when they were, when they approached the healthcare sector, they were admitted under OPD or got healthcare under OPD, that is outpatient department. They faced issue regarding the rising expenditure. In fact, the survey also says that one of the rising or one of the causes as to why population falls into poverty in India. In fact, the survey says around 15% of the population in India, because they avail healthcare and spend a lot of money out of their pocket, fall into poverty. They fall into poverty on annual basis. And if you just convert this 15% in terms of absolute number of poor people in India or absolute number of population, more than 30 million, I'll repeat it, more than 30 million people fall into poverty because of healthcare expenditure. So these are some of the issues or the problems that have been highlighted by the NFHS regarding the healthcare sector in India. Now, what is the issue here? Why should you understand all of this? The government of India is promoting the concept of universal health care, UHC. In fact, government has launched an initiative under the initiative under which the government is providing insurance for a lot of population in India. A lot of people in India are being covered under that. But whenever you talk about universal health care, what does it actually mean? What does it essentially entail? The WHO, World Health Organization, the World Health Organization simply says universal health care means you get access to quality health care. Remember this particular definition? You get access to quality health care. And when I write HC in this context, it means health care, not high court health care. So WHO says universal health care means you get access to quality health care without facing any kind of a financial burden. You do not have to face a higher financial burden whenever you want, wherever you want. Is the statement clear to all of you? I'll repeat the statement. Understand this carefully. The universal healthcare, according to WHO, is defined as getting access to all the required services, that is quality healthcare services, without having to face a higher financial burden whenever you want, wherever you want. It essentially focuses on two very important aspects. One, access to healthcare, and second, the quality of the healthcare. It talks about access to healthcare and the quality of the healthcare. Access represented in the form of how much expenditure you are supposed to incur, and quality represented in the form of what is the quality of the healthcare. Do you have sufficient number of experts who will provide you this healthcare when you go to a hospital, etc. So the focus is on two very important parameters, the access as well as the quality of the healthcare. Now, if you compare this definition with what are the findings of the National Family Health Survey, you will realize that there are certain issues, there are certain problems regarding the universal health coverage or healthcare in India. Although Government of India, I'll repeat this, although Government of India has implemented multiple policies, it has invested money periodically in order to curb or reduce the communicable diseases in India. To a very great extent, we have been able to do that. It has invested money to develop healthcare infrastructure. It has invested money to provide insurance to a certain number of people under Ayushman Bharat program, etc. But even then, why are there issues in the Indian healthcare sector? When you talk to a common man, they generally say that they have problems or they have faced problems whenever they talk about healthcare sector. These are certain reasons. Follow the discussion carefully. Point number one, there is no sufficient availability of skilled workers. We do not have sufficient availability of skilled workers, or let's say skilled manforce or the workforce at all the levels of healthcare infrastructure. For example, many of these community-led or community-level hospitals or healthcare infrastructure, primary healthcare infrastructure units which have been developed by the government, sufficient number of doctors are not present. You must have seen multiple news articles where you will come across information saying the doctor was not available, the compounder conducted the surgery. Compounder is not having sufficient knowledge, is not educated enough, is not qualified for conducting all of this. So point number one, you do not have sufficient skilled manpower at all the levels of healthcare infrastructure. Point number two, the private sector presence. The presence of the private sector. Many experts basically argue that one of the reasons why we are not able to achieve the universal healthcare coverage in India is because of the private sector presence. How so? The private sector, no doubt, will add to the infrastructure facility, or let's say, will add to the services being provided by the government, no doubt. But the private sector has gone for over-commercialization. It has followed over-commercialization. It is following profiteering model. Essentially, what does it mean? The private sector, rather than earning sufficient profit according to the services that they provide, is focused only on the profits. It is focused only on the profits. In fact, more and more foreign investors now, foreign companies now, for example, BlackRock is investing in Indian companies that is essentially setting up healthcare facilities. So the argument here is they are not worried about the quality of services that they provide. They are more focused on the profits that they will be able to generate for every rupee of investment that they are doing. And it is not wrong to focus on profits, but it is wrong only to focus on profits and to work on increasing the profits. For example, in many of the cases you must have come across or you must have experienced the doctors prescribing unnecessarily high number of medicines. The doctors prescribing unnecessary tests that are supposed to be conducted, which essentially will add to the bottom line of the company, or let's say the hospital, which is a private sector hospital now. So profiteering or over commercialization or corporatization of healthcare sector has also added to the problem faced by the common man. And when you talk about over commercialization by the private sector, that is also one of the reasons why out of the pocket expenditure are very, very high in India. According to various data sets, the out-of-pocket expenditure will vary from one state to another state, but averages between 45% to 54% in case of India. According to the Sustainable Development Goals, these are supposed to be much lesser, below 20%. But in case of India, it varies and is right in the range of 45% to 54%. That is a problem. And fourth particular concern here, fourth important point why this is a problem in case of India is that the government expenditure, no doubt, the absolute expenditure has increased. No doubt over a period of time, how much government is spending, every rupee that they are spending, the amount has increased. But when you calculate this as a percentage of GDP, it has almost all the times remained in the range of 1% to 1.2%. It has remained in the range of 1% to 1.2%. The highest level that India hit in terms of healthcare expenditure was 1.3% of GDP. But if you talk about what is the recommendation, the WHO recommends that the countries are supposed to spend at least 3% of their GDP in the healthcare sector. So when you look at all of these particular pointers, you will realize that there are serious issues which India faces in the healthcare sector. And mind you, how healthy a person is has a direct implication over their productivity, their contribution to economic activity, etc. So if India wants to become a developed country, in a longer duration, if India wants to become a developed country, there is no other option but to invest to develop the healthcare sector. In this regard, what should be done then? What can be the solution in case of all of these particular problems? The solution is to ensure that the reforms are implemented according to the requirement. What do you mean by according to the requirement here? Again, I'll introduce the concept of supply and demand. There are two sides here, supply and demand. You know there are problems in case of supply side, try to implement reforms there. You know there are problems in the demand side, try to implement the reforms there. For example, many of you will simply say, okay sir, on the supply side, many of the points that you have said, we will address that. But what about the demand side? The demand essentially for healthcare will be from you and from me. But don't you think from one state to another state, according to the weather, according to the climate, according to the food consumption, etc., the demand for the healthcare will keep on changing? Point number one. So whenever you provide for a policy to promote healthcare in India, you need to keep this in mind. A blanket policy will not be effective. From one region to another region, the policy has to take care of the regional changes. Point number two. In case of India, over a period of time, the number of deaths that are accounted because of non-communicable diseases have increased. We have implemented multiple reforms, as a result of which the deaths caused by the communicable diseases have come down, and today more than 60% are caused because of non-communicable diseases. In that particular context, the major non-communicable diseases adding to or contributing to death are cancer, diabetes, and these kind of NCDs are a result of the lifestyle that we have, the kind of food that we consume, the kind of work that we do, etc. So don't you think government should also implement certain reforms to address these sort of issues so that the cases of non-communicable diseases will come down? And if you address that with the supply side, the healthcare sector will be able to provide the universal healthcare coverage. In that particular regard, what can be other recommendation? The government should also ensure that the contributors to the health, what do you mean by contributors to the health? For example, the water that I drink, the food that I consume, the air that I breathe, etc., etc., the government will have to implement policies to ensure that the contributors to the health are also maintained appropriately. Right? So these are some of the recommendations that have been provided regarding the universal healthcare coverage, challenges, as well as the problems that are faced and the solutions that you can provide wherever this kind of a question is asked in the mains paper. Done? And because please understand, at the end of the day, if government will simply provide, let's say, right, I'll give you one example here. If government will provide you, let's say, e-voucher, I'm pretty sure all of you have come across the concept of e-voucher by now. If government will provide your e-voucher to get, let's say, healthcare access, what is the point if there is no sufficient supply of healthcare access? The whole concept becomes a failure. The whole idea becomes ineffective. That's the reason you need to have supply side reforms as well as demand side reforms. Done? Okay, so many of you are asking me, sir, how do I join the Telegram channel? How do I download the PPT, etc.? You can scan this QR code. This QR code will take you to my Telegram channel. And once the class is over, and on every Saturday, I keep on uploading a lot of documents, a lot of PDFs, which will provide you updation, current affairs, descriptive answer writing practice, etc. For GS Paper 3 Indian Economy. And for this PPT also, if you want, I will upload it after the class is over. You can join the channel. Okay. Now, mains answer writing practice. Question number 32. There is a need for holistic approach for providing healthcare in India, which integrates public health initiatives, regional considerations, and climate resilience. Elaborate on the statement, a 15 marker in 250 words. Next article, AI surveillance. The legal gaps in India's unregulated AI surveillance. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. How many of you will be okay if all of your WhatsApp chats are published in internet? How many of you will be okay if your bank statements are put in public domain, that is in an internet website? How many of you will be okay if people, that is the public, comes to know with whom you are talking, with whom you are meeting, what you are doing, etc., etc.? Everybody wants to protect their privacy, correct? Including me, by the way. Don't say, sir, why are you asking only us? What about you? My dear, even I myself, I want to protect my privacy. In the same way, everybody would want to protect their own privacy, because there are certain issues which we do not want the public to know. Of course, yes, there are many people who want the world to know what they've eaten in their lunch, what they had in their coffee, where they went on Saturday evening for shopping. That's a different crowd altogether, which is increasing day by day, by the way. But every one of us want to protect our own privacy. But very recently, the government of India has announced something very important, which has led to a lot of debate regarding, is it a right step or is it going to violate the right to privacy of the individuals? That is, of course, government has announced that they will be using artificial intelligence in their surveillance mechanism. In essence, or in a nutshell, they are saying, now whenever the policing will be done, we are going to use artificial intelligence. For example, let's say CCTVs are installed, closed circuit TVs. Now, whenever they are going to capture, right, all of this video, the video feed, that data will be used by an artificial intelligence to basically give certain output, or let's say give certain signals to the government or to the police. Now, there are two sides to this. One, is there a need for this kind of AI surveillance? And if yes, what are the concerns then? What are the issues related to this kind of a mechanism? The need for this is very simple. There is a need to use technology in order to improve the policing mechanism in India. It's a matter of fact that the number of policemen for every, let's say, 1 lakh people in India, we are far lower compared to other countries. Now, you cannot keep on hiring more and more number of people as policemen as the only solution. That is not going to provide a structural solution, or let's say a strategic solution to the policing problems. What you need to do now is, introduce or adopt new type of technology. Take the use of technology. And through the usage of technology, you can essentially improve the quality of policing work that you are doing. That is where AI will help policing or surveillance. Point number 2, the AI technology will also be useful for identifying, let's say, certain people who have escaped, who are absconding, or who are missing. For example, many of the times, I'm not saying all the times, many of the times, certain people who are facing mental disabilities end up missing. They will enter into a particular place along with, let's say, their relatives or caretakers, but in the crowd, they will end up, going missing. And because they do not have control over their faculties, they will end up going into one more part of the city or altogether entering into another city. So in such cases, don't you think you can use the AI technology that is basically going for a facial recognition of the person using CCTV feed? That will also help you. Third one, let's say finding out certain behavioral patterns. Using certain behavioral patterns, you can basically find out what the person is trying to do. But for us to sit in front of the CCTV feed and keep on checking every feed or every piece of video that you're getting through CCTV, it is not possible. So can you use the artificial intelligence there, which will basically use a certain parameters to flag, to point out regarding the behavior of certain people. And let's say, what about doing the facial recognition to identify terrorist? If there is certain terrorist who has entered into India, it is very difficult to find out, let's say, where the person is there, how they are moving, in which region they are there, right? And you cannot individually monitor all the CCTV feed to find out. So can you use the technology such as a facial recognition that can be done by artificial intelligence to basically point out and pinpoint the exact location of the person who is a terrorist here? Of course, yes. And not to forget the usage of AI, let's say AI plus drone technology to manage crowd. Whenever religious processions are taking place, there is always a danger that there can be a clash. So can you manage the crowd better? Can you manage can you assess what kind of a region or what kind of a route can be allocated to them, etc. So in all these cases, I hope you understand, these are some illustrations. Some illustrations, not an exhaustive list, but an illustrative list. So these are some of the illustrations where you can simply say there is a need for artificial intelligence in the surveillance. But at the same point of time, there are certain concerns which have been raised regarding usage of AI. What are the concerns? It is not the first time that the usage of technology in surveillance has been mooted in India or in other countries. Technology over a period of time has been used by multiple countries to monitor, to conduct a surveillance regarding not only the citizens of the country as well as non-citizens. Couple of years ago, I hope you have come across this article where they basically said the US intelligence agencies conducted surveillance and had audio tapes, conversations which were conducted by other global leaders with other people. Is it not a cause of concern? And if these kind of, let's say, sensitive, classified information is leaked, if it is put in the public domain, it can lead to national security concern. It can also be weaponized to humiliate another global leader. So regarding the concerns here, one is essentially who is going to monitor it? Who is going to monitor it? And on what basis you are going to use the AI surveillance to collect data? What kind of data you are going to collect? That is the first question. And if the data is collected, for how long the data will be stored? Because these are very, very personal set of data, very much related to privacy of individuals. In case of India, please remember, there is a right to privacy. right? In the Supreme Court judgment, there is a right to privacy provided to us as a fundamental right under Article 21. So argument here is, one, who is going to collect what kind of data, and if they are collecting data, for what time it will be stored, for what duration the data will be stored, and if this particular data, if it is collected, is it collected through consent or without any consent of the people? I hope you understand. Is it collected through consent or without any consent? For example, I hope you understand this. Today, if you want to take a loan, unlike earlier situation, you do not have to collect data or let's say different documents from different financial institutions and submit it to a bank. No. Today, there is a repository which has been created. All of your financial data is there. And upon your consent, I hope you understand this point. Upon your consent, this financial set of data is shared with the bank. If you do not give consent, that will not be shared. So the argument here is, when you collect the data and you use it, is there a consent followed here? Regarding this, I'll just add a point here. The Government of India introduced back in the year 2023 the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023 was introduced. The government basically argued, whatever is the digital data of individuals, there will be certain provisions under the act which will provide protection. It will provide protection to your the digital data or privacy matters. But there are certain provisions under the DPA, Digital Personal Data Protection Act. There are certain provisions using which the government itself can basically ignore the consent of the person. And that has led to a lot of criticism against this particular act. So I hope you understand. There are provisions where the government can simply waive off your consent. They do not require your consent. So there is a lot of criticism regarding such provisions under DPA. Now, to add to these particular concerns, there is a fourth point. What if lot of your data is collected and there is a leakage? What if your data is collected and there is a leakage? Very often you must have come across the pieces of news where they'll say certain entity, the data has been leaked. A bank is there, the data of individuals or the customers has been leaked. There is a fintech company, the data has been leaked. Aadhaar data has been leaked, etc., etc. Whether it is true or not, you don't worry. But just imagine this. Your sensitive data, the private conversation that you've had, where you went, etc., etc. If all of this data is leaked, don't you think that is a cause of concern? That might in certain cases cause irreparable humiliation, mental stress to the concerned person, etc. So, and in many of the cases, this data can be used for marketing purposes. This data can be used to extort a certain amount of money, etc. So, leakage of data, what are the, let's say, the mechanisms that we have? What kind of policies do we have in order to protect the data like this? Right? So, these are some of the concerns which have been raised regarding inclusion of AI surveillance, right, in the policing mechanism. Now, in addition to this, there are many other reasons also. For example, can a political party, again, just an example by the way, can a political party weaponize the data that they have collected using AI surveillance mechanism to target, let's say, journalists, to target a certain people with a certain skin color, to target their political opponents? Of course, yes, there are many loopholes that can be utilized. And that is the precise reason. Now, the columnist basically says, right now, we do not have any kind of a guardrail. We do not have any kind of a system that we can use to protect whatever data has been collected using artificial intelligence. So, what is the way forward then? What should be the recommendation in such cases? The way forward is simple. Point number one, have a policy where you will put it in the public domain as to giving details regarding what kind of data you will collect, how you will collect, that is basically the procedure to collect data and what data is collected. Have a mechanism, have a framework and put it in the public domain. And not just this, once you collect data, also tell us for what time the data will be stored. For how long the data will be stored? Are you collecting the data with consent or without consent? Please do let me know that as well. Third point, one way to ensure that this kind of a mechanism is not misused, is not abused, is basically following the mechanism which has been followed by European Union, wherein whenever they talk about, let's say, the artificial intelligence usage, they have a risk-based mechanism. They have a mechanism which is called as the risk-based mechanism. They have classified where you are supposed to use this and where you are prohibited from using this. So according to this risk-based mechanism, they are using the artificial intelligence. So can we emulate the same model in case of India? Can we use that kind of a model in case of India? Think of that as well. Point number 4, we should have jurisdictional oversight. That is, a judiciary should be given certain powers to oversee how this is going to be implemented. For example, without consent, if the data is collected, it should not be allowed. But who will monitor all of it? That is essentially the power that should be given to judiciary. So judicial oversight is also recommended as a way forward regarding usage of artificial intelligence to conduct a surveillance in India. Done? So these are some of the points regarding the article provided here. Please be very careful. Usage of technology. The artificial intelligence is mentioned multiple times in the newspaper on day-to-day basis. Now, next article. The committee has recommended, a parliamentary committee has recommended statutory status to MSP. Regarding MSP, there has been a lot of discussion in the last couple of years. Now, in addition to all of this discussion, there is a parliamentary standing committee which has recommended that the government of India should start seriously thinking of providing statutory status to MSP. Just to make the discussion much more comprehensive, I have taken one article from Indian Express and the other article, as usual, is from Hindu newspaper. So what are the recommendations? Although the most important recommendation is regarding MSP, let's not be focused only on the MSP. Let's go beyond the MSP recommendation and look at other recommendations as well. So as usual, the first important recommendation is you should provide a statutory status to MSP. Statutory status essentially here means right now the government of India doesn't announce MSP as a result of a provision under the Act. There is no provision regarding MSP under any of the laws in India. The MSP is announced because of the executive authority given to Government of India. So the parliamentary panel simply states that there should be a statutory status provided regarding MSP, and they have given certain arguments in favor of it. There are arguments against, but the arguments in favor of it is, one, it will provide comfort to the farmer. Comfort in the sense, the farmer doesn't have to be worried about the kind of volatility in the market prices. The market prices are very volatile, but if there is a statutory status, the farmer doesn't have to be worried. There is always a protection to this kind of or against this kind of volatility given to the farmer. So that will provide comfort. And if the farmers, right, are okay with this, if the farmers are happy with this, argument is they will have higher amount of investment. They will invest more money in the agriculture sector. And when the farmers will invest more money, the production of agriculture commodities will start increasing. And the panel report says this will further enhance the food security issue in India. This will further enhance the food security issue in India. So looking at all these advantages, The report mentions that the advantages or the benefits outweigh the concerns associated with the statutory status given to MSP. This is the first recommendation. Second important recommendation is PM Kisan. Second important recommendation is regarding PM Kisan, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. This initiative was implemented by the Government of India from 2019. Under this initiative, government annually will provide 6,000 rupees to the farmer in 3 installments, 2,000, 2,000 and 2,000. So 3 equal installments is given to the farmer. Now the problem that the committee says is, this was introduced back in the year 2019 and since then we are providing 6,000 rupees only. Don't you think the cost of inputs has increased over a period of time? The cost of, right, let's say other inputs such as seeds or irrigation equipment, etc. has changed over a period of time. So the Government of India should double the allocation under the PM Kisan from 6,000 rupees to 12,000 rupees. From 6,000, it should be doubled to 12,000. In fact, in yesterday's newspaper, not in Hindu but other newspaper, there was one article which will be a cause of concern for the farmers. The article basically spoke about the diammonium phosphate, DAP. I'm just connecting one more current affairs point here. Listen to me carefully. The diammonium phosphate is the second largest fertilizer consumed in India after urea. After urea, farmers consume highest amount of DAP. The problem regarding the DAP that has been quoted in the yesterday's newspaper is that the government is considering allowing the companies to increase the prices of DAP by 200 rupees per bag. I hope you understand. Allowing the companies to increase the DAP by 200 rupees per bag, which essentially means if this is implemented, the DAP per bag means 50 kgs. The cost of DAP will rise, and if the cost of the DAP rises, don't you think that will automatically hurt investment or let's say the expenditure that would be done by the farmers? Because the farmers consume lot of diammonium phosphate. So I hope you understand this is how you need to keep on connecting the dots like this. So second one is increase the allocation under PM Kisan, double it. Third recommendation, right now whenever the Government of India makes policies regarding export and import, whenever the policies regarding export and import are done, the interest of the farmers is not generally taken into consideration. And when I say interest here, do you consult farmers or even the representatives of the farmers whenever you take a decision to impose a restriction or to promote exports and imports? Generally no. Government generally takes into consideration the interest of the consumers, that is you and me, who will pay money to purchase the food grains, vegetables, pulses, etc. in the market in order to provide comfort for us, in order to protect our interest. Government of India suddenly will announce a ban on export of, let's say, rice. It will announce ban on the export of onion, etc. But when the government does this, will this not hurt the farmers' income? Of course, yes. So what is the solution then? The panel has recommended that a new type of a committee has to be set up. A new type of an institution has to be set up on the lines of CACP, just like CACP, Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices. Right? So set up a new entity on the lines of CACP and have representatives even from the farmer side, so that like CACP, which will recommend MSP to government, now government can consult this authority to formulate export and import policy. This is the third very important recommendation. Fourth very important recommendation, which I personally feel is not supposed to be implemented because it will not provide a long-term solution to the farming community, is basically government should introduce a policy to waive off debt. Debt waiver. the government should consider debt waiver for the farmers. You can provide a debt waiver for the farmers today, but that is not going to provide a relief to the farmers in a long term. It is not a structural solution whatsoever. So that is also one recommendation. Fifth recommendation provided by the panel is related to crop insurance. It is related to crop insurance. All the farmers who own a piece of land up to 2 hectares, that is essentially small and marginal farmers. All the farmers who own a piece of land up to 2 hectares should be covered, and there should be a compulsory or a mandatory crop insurance provided by Government of India. Right? Reason essentially is to provide protection to these kind of farmers even if there is a crop loss. So these are the 5 very important recommendations that have been provided by the parliamentary panel, which has been, or this report has been tabled in the parliament yesterday. So please be very, very careful. Okay, now associated with this, I've given an MCQ. MCQ number 50. Consider the following statements regarding PM Kisan. There are 3 statements. How many of these statements are true? If you know the answer, do let me know in the chat section. If not, I will let you know the answer later. Don't worry. I've also given a question for descriptive answer writing practice. Critically evaluate the need to provide legally guaranteed MSP. You'll have to provide the benefits of legally guaranteeing MSP and the criticism or the problems associated with providing legally guaranteed MSP. Okay. Now, next article. Stuck in the classroom, the students, teachers, as well as the National Education Policy 2020. What are the important points? According to the National Education Policy, and by the way, because I'm discussing regarding National Education Policy, in which year India introduced the first National Education Policy? In which year? Right? If you know the answer, do let me know in the chat section, and those who will watch the recorded version, do let me know what is the right answer. So the Government of India has implemented the National Education Policy. If you go by the new education policy, that is 2020, for a graduation, right? For a graduation, now for a course of 4 years, the students are supposed to spend around 20 hours on weekly basis in colleges, that is attending classrooms, right? By the students attending the classes in the classroom. So they are supposed to spend on an average, or right, because of 4 courses into 5 hours, 5 courses into 4 hours, this will become 20 hours on a week. But if you compare this with what kind of a structure is followed by Western economies, the students there for graduation spend 12 hours on weekly basis in the classes, attending classes. Now, what is the difference? Some of you will say, but sir, just 8 hours of difference. The argument that has been put forward by the columnist is very simple. Because the students are spending more number of hours, 8 additional hours attending classes, they will not have sufficient time to do other work. What do you mean by other work? What about self-learning? What about self-learning? What about, right, let's say stress that is faced by the students, too much of, let's say, listening in the classes. What about, right, let's say other activities such as group activities or even attending multiple tests, debates, etc., etc. And by the way, please understand, these kind of other activities are needed. For example, a better way to learn is not just a rote learning. A better way to learn is understanding the concept, discussing the concepts with others, writing an essay on it, etc. So that will give you more confidence, that will increase your learning levels. But because the Indian students are spending more number of hours compared to other students in Western economies, the learning levels are getting affected. And according to the National Education Policy 2020, understand this, it basically recommends that there should be a continuous assessment. There should be a continuous assessment, and that is important. Reason being, if I give you, let's say, if you want to assess yourself regarding how well you are learning the concept, whether you are simply memorizing the concept, the best way to that is enter into discussions with each other. Write multiple tests, not MCQs, but also descriptive test. Because MCQs, if you remember, you will get more marks, but the descriptive answer writing will test your learning levels, your analytical skill sets. So under the NEP 2020, it recommends continuous assessments, that is, have multiple times and different types of assessment test which you will basically provide it to the students rather than conducting 1 or 2 tests which is MCQ based. That will not give you the right assessment. And at the same point of time, if you have assessments, let's say 4 to 5 times or let's say 3 to 4 times in one semester, you can get a better understanding of whether the students are learning, and as a teacher, is your teaching method correct or you need to make certain changes in your teaching methodology. So that is the precise reason the National Education Policy recommends a continuous assessment. But now think of it, if you are spending more number of hours in the classroom itself attending classes, don't you think that will hamper going for continuous assessment under NEP 2020? That is the point which is being made by the columnist here. So ultimately what the columnist is saying is simple. We need, in order to have, let's say, efficient implementation of NEP 2020, we need to make certain changes to our curriculum. We need to introduce a certain important, let's say, different types of learning methodologies. And at the same point of time, if the teachers are also spending a longer number of hours, more number of hours just teaching, does it not mean they will not have sufficient time to be involved in research? They will not have sufficient time to update, right? Or they will not have sufficient time to prepare the correct curriculum, etc. So it is not just hampering the learning levels of the students, it is also limiting, right, the teacher's performance. So that's a reason, right, introduce certain changes to this kind of a curriculum approach that we are following as per the new National Education Policy. Done? So these are certain points regarding the NEP 2020, right? Very often this is there in the newspaper. Please be very, very careful. And by the way, those who are saying, sir, the National Education Policy, the first time was introduced in 1968, you are absolutely correct. Vishal Gaikwad, my dear, I did not say what Indira ma'am. Okay, I did not ask you who introduced it. I asked you when was it introduced. So 1968, first policy. Again revised in 1986, second policy. This 1986 policy was revised in 1992. And the latest one is NEP 2020. So these are certain important points. Please be very careful. Next one. A panel which was set up by the Government of India has recommended restructuring of National Testing Agency. National Testing Agency. Okay, so what are the important points here? In the last couple of months, there have been multiple instances where the test papers have been leaked. Right? The test papers which are supposed to be conducted at the national level, entrance exam test papers have been leaked. Now, what is the solution to that? Government of India, one of the measures that they took was essentially set up a panel which was headed by the former ISRO chairperson K. Radhakrishnan, right, to suggest recommendations, to give certain recommendations to revamp or to change the methodology followed by National Testing Agency. And this panel now has given recommendations, submitted the report to the government, and regarding that, certain recommendations have been mentioned. What are the important recommendations? Before understanding the recommendation, please understand certain points regarding NTA, National Testing Agency. NTA was established in 2017. It will conduct examination for around 15 entrance exams as well as, right, the fellowship exams. it will conduct examinations for, right, let's say around 15 entrance examinations as well as fellowship exams. Annually, for example, in 2023, there are more than 12 million students who are registered to take different examinations basically provided by NTA, conducted by NTA. So, in addition to this, apart from this, remember the composition as well. Remember the composition. NTA is headed by a chairperson. Okay, the governing body of NTA is headed by a chairperson. In addition to chairperson, there are 8 members in the governing body, and there is also a member secretary. There is also a member secretary. Right? So, these are certain important points regarding NTA. Now, what are the recommendations provided by the committee here, the panel here? Point number 1, the committee has recommended that as long as you do not develop expertise, as long as you don't have all the mechanism that is required to conduct these kind of examinations, do not conduct all the examinations, just be focused only on entrance examination. Is it okay? The first one is, do not focus on all the examinations that you are conducting right now. Don't worry about other examinations. Focus on, right, only the entrance examination. First recommendation. Second recommendation, in order to protect the, let's say, the integrity of the test, integrity of the examinations that you have conducted, multiple recommendations have been provided as to how to conduct the exam. For example, they have recommended, can we use fast printers? Think of it. Can we use fast printers at the examination center? Can we have secured servers through which the test papers will be given to the test centers? Can we have, right, let's say, the concept of Digi exam? Digi exam, right? What is this idea of a Digi exam that has been recommended or that has been proposed by this committee? In fact, this kind of a technology is being discussed even in case of UPSC examination now. Essentially, Digi exam basically functions on the same model of a Digi Yatra. Digi Yatra is being or has been implemented in India. That is, let's say you want to travel from one area to another area using flight services. At the entrance of the airport itself, there is a facial scanning that is done. But for that, you will have to be registered on the Digi Yatra app. So essentially what they're trying to do there is to ensure that the person who has booked the ticket is the same as the person who is entering into the airport. So can we use this kind of a facial recognition or biometric authenticated model in case of conducting exams as well? For example, I will apply for a particular exam. I will provide the photo, right? I will provide my biometrics also. And when I go to write the exam, they will conduct the biometric authentication all over again, just to ensure that the person who has filled the form is also the same person who has come to write the exam. Right? So basically, can we implement this kind of a Digi exam facility in improving the safety and security and integrity of these kind of entrance examination? In fact, this is also recommended making availability or increasing the availability of this kind of test even to rural regions. What kind of recommendation has been provided? Can we have certain vans which are movable? Certain vans which are movable, which will go to regionals or which will go to, let's say, certain regions, villages, etc., where small number of people, less number of people in batches will be able to take the exam online. Right? So this kind of a recommendation also has been provided. Right? So regional accessibility. Improving regional accessibility is also one of the recommendations. Right? Fourth recommendation, it has recommended that the NTA should be restructured. The National Testing Agency should be restructured. In fact, the minister also has accepted this particular recommendation. In a press statement, the recommendation has been accepted and the minister says, Mr. Pradhan says, in 2025, the National Testing Agency will be restructured. And the fifth recommendation, a grievance redressal mechanism. A grievance redressal mechanism, that is, whenever there are certain concerns raised at the state level, at the district level, there should be a mechanism which should be set up to address these kind of grievances. So these are some of the recommendations. Again, I'm not saying all the recommendations. There are certain recommendations which are very technical in nature. That is, multiple subjects in the exam, etc., etc. Very technical recommendations are there. But these are some of the important recommendations which have been provided by K. Radhakrishnan panel. One of the students was asking, Binita, my dear, the recommendations have been provided by K. Radhakrishnan panel or K. Radhakrishnan committee. Done. So these are some of the recommendations. Be very careful. This can be asked in prelims. Next, UK announces curbs on 20 Russian ships part of shadow fleet. What are the important points here? Point number one, the term dark fleet or shadow fleet. What does it mean? In some of the cases, this is also referred to as grey fleet. Okay, dark fleet, grey fleet or shadow fleet. What does it mean? Essentially, these mean the ships that are engaged in illegal operations for the purposes of circumventing sanctions. Now, let me give you a basic idea what is happening here. Okay, now, listen to me carefully. After Russia attacked Ukraine, Russia invaded Ukraine. There are multiple measures taken by G7 group of countries and their allies just to ensure that the Russian economy will be crippled. Their argument is Russia is conducting trade with rest of the world, and one of the very important exports that is done by Russia is oil. So how about hitting or taking certain measures which will hurt the Russian oil exports? So the exports will come down, earnings of Russia will also come down, and this will hamper funneling this money. Financing for the war can be hampered. That was the whole argument, right? I hope you understand. I'll repeat it again. Russia exports oil to rest of the world, earns money, and uses this money to conduct war or finance the war against Ukraine. So we will take certain measures to basically reduce the export of oil, which means earnings will come down, which will also hamper the war financing activities by Russia. And to make it a reality, the G7 group of countries implemented certain policies. For example, there was an oil price cap that was implemented by these particular countries. Oil price cap. And even before that, they basically stopped buying oil from Russia and basically warned other countries also not to buy oil from Russia. So oil price cap was imposed. They did not buy or they stopped buying oil from Russia. But even after this, they say that Russia used many other tools, many other, let's say, methodologies, most of them illegal in nature, to ensure that they will continue to supply oil, right, using different fleets, different vessels and ships, and continue to make earnings by exporting oil. And these, right, methods which are illegal in nature, mostly illegal in nature, and the ships they are using, the companies they are using, these are essentially called as shadow fleet, dark fleet, or grey fleet. I hope all of you have understood the meaning of these three terms, dark, grey, or shadow fleet. These are used interchangeably. Now, what has the UK done? And this is not the first time that the UK has taken such a measure. So, the UK government has identified certain number of companies, a certain number of vessels, and they have basically, right, imposed restrictions on these Russian ships which are carrying crude oil, which are carrying, right, let's say oil for exports or in the form of exports to other countries. So, this is essentially the announcement done by the UK government, and the key term, remember the key term, dark fleet, shadow fleet, or grey fleet. Either one of them can be asked in the preliminary examination. Now, next one, bomb hoax threat. In today's Hindu newspaper, all the editions by the way, whether you take international edition or Delhi edition, in the left corner of one of the pages, there are two important articles. The first article is regarding the government of India increasing the penalty if you are found to be involved in the bomb hoax threat. In the last 1 year, there is a rising menace of people, right, giving a call or a hoax threat for, right, basically grounding of many of these aeroplane services. The government of India simply says, when a person or an organization will make a hoax threat like this, it will lead to a lot of disruption in the civil aviation market. For example, in many of the cases, the aeroplane might be mid-air and a threat is received by the government or let's say the authorities. Now they will have to immediately land the plane in the nearest aeroplane. That will lead to a lot of disruption, and it will also keep on adding to the economic cost of operations being conducted by the aeroplane authorities. Not to forget all the discomfort that will be experienced by the passengers. So what can be done? Government of India now says, we will increase the penalty under this. We will increase the penalty. And what I found interesting was, right, slightly interesting was, in the Hindu newspaper, they simply say, penalty up to 1 crore rupees for airline bomb hoax threat. And the information that is provided is very limited. And you and me, as learners, as readers of the newspaper, will simply read the headline and will make a mental note of it and say, okay, penalty up to 1 CR then. But in reality, if you read another article that is provided in Business Line, the reality is, for an individual, if you basically are found to be involved in making this hoax threat, the penalty has been increased to 1 lakh. For an individual, it is 1 lakh. For an organization, remember this, for an organization, this has been increased to 1 CR, up to 1 CR. So if you're an individual, it will be 1 lakh rupees. If you're an organization, it will be up to 1 crore. Now, I don't expect UPSC to ask you point on, let's say, question on the value of the penalty. But what are the measures under which law it has been introduced? That can be asked. This has been introduced by amending, by changing the rules, that is a Civil Aviation Ministry has amended Aircraft Security Rules 2023. Remember this, Aircraft Security Rules 2023. So by making an amendment to this particular security rules, Government of India now has increased the penalties that they will impose if you are found to be involved in making hoax threats from to 1 lakh rupees for an individual and up to 1 crore rupees to an organization. Done? Okay. Now, because I'm discussing civil aviation market, let me add a couple of more pointers from different newspapers so that you have a comprehensive understanding. Very recently in the parliament, there has been a lot of discussion regarding the pricing of tickets. The pricing of the air tickets. Right? Mr. Raghav Chadha raised the issue in the parliament, and the other MPs also raised the issue. Their argument was, why is the government of India not regulating air tariffs? Why are they not basically fixing certain policy or let's say certain formula which has to be used by the civil aviation companies to determine air tariffs? In many of the cases, even a common man, right, a common man, you want the common man to travel in the aeroplane. You want them to purchase the air tickets. But the air tickets are so high, right, that will deter the participation of these people in this economic activity. So regarding this, the clarification has been provided by the government in Rajya Sabha. And this was reported in other newspapers. Right, the government of India simply says, government right now doesn't have any law to regulate the air tariffs. The government is not making any laws as of now. Then who will regulate the air tariff? The representative, that is the Minister for Civil Aviation, has stated that it is under the purview of Competition Commission of India. Remember this. It is under the purview of Competition Commission of India. In addition to the CCI looking over, right, and regulating the air civil aviation tariffs, because civil aviation, the tariffs, the government says, should be determined by supply and demand. The supply and demand should determine the tariffs. In addition to this, there is one more important piece of news that has been provided. That is under, right, let's say Rule 135. Under Rule 135, right, of Aircraft Rules 1937. Under Rule 135 of, right, Aircraft Rules 1937, the Director General, right, the DGCA has the powers to regulate, to come into picture and to ensure that the air tickets are not very, very highly priced. What does the Rule 135 essentially say? It says that the air transport undertaking operating in accordance to the rules shall establish tariff having regard to all the relevant factors. That is, a company which is providing services to you, whenever they will charge you certain ticket prices, the price should be decided based on certain important factors. For example, what is the aviation turbine fuel prices? What is the charges that they are supposed to pay to, right, the airport, etc., etc. Consider these factors in determining the tariff. And under the same section, under the same rule, that is 135 section 4, the DGCA, Directorate General for Civil Aviation, if they find that the companies are charging very high ticket prices, they can intervene. And you will be asking, sir, how they will intervene, how they will come to know? The minister says the DGCA has set up, right, let's say, a department for this. And that is essentially the Tariff Monitoring Unit, TMU. Tariff Monitoring Unit has been set up, and the TMU will be looking at what are the tariffs which are imposed and collected by different civil aviation companies. So these are certain important points regarding civil aviation market. Very often this is there in the newspaper. Be careful. Next, MGNREGA wages. MGNREGA wages. Right? What has been recommendation of the parliamentary committee regarding, or parliamentary panel regarding MGNREGA wages? Here are the simple points. The people who are covered as beneficiaries under MGNREGA are paid wages. Now, the government of India under section 6, subsection 1, section 6, subsection 1 determines what should be the wages paid to the people who are covered under MGNREGA. And these wages, mind you, will vary from one state to another state. You do not have a uniform wage structure. It will vary from one state to another state. The parliamentary panel has given a report flagging certain issues. What are the issues? Point number 1. The wages which are paid, we are not using the right index to adjust these wages. Right now, the index that is used for adjusting the wages is CPI-AL. CPI-AL, agriculture, labor. So CPI-AL is used to adjust the wages, and this CPI-AL measures the rural inflation. That is specifically from certain number of villages, the data is collected and that is measured in the form of CPI-AL. But the authority, that is a panel report, says it is not the right measure. Indexing has to be done with a better indicator of inflation. That is the first very important recommendation, because the argument is the wages have increased over a period of time, but at the same point of time, there is a rise in the price levels of various commodities. So what is the hike given in the wages is not proportionate to hike in the overall inflation experienced by the people. So use a better inflation mechanism or inflation indexing mechanism. This is the first very important recommendation. Be very, very careful. Point number 2. Right now, like I said, the wages which are paid will vary from one state to another state. For example, the state of Arunachal Pradesh, right? The state of Arunachal Pradesh pays 234. The state of Haryana pays 374. But if you look at the directive principles of the state policy, DPSP, under that article, it basically recommends equal pay for equal work. Equal pay for equal work. So when you employ a beneficiary as a wage worker, either in Haryana or in case of Arunachal Pradesh, are you not getting the same number of work from them? Are you not employing them from the same number of hours? In that case, why there is a difference in the wages? Why should there be a difference in the wages? That is the second very important recommendation. And third very important recommendation is, right now, 100 days of wage work is provided under MGNREGA. This should be increased to 150 days. So these are the three very important recommendations regarding MGNREGA. Please make a note of this, because the articles which have been provided talk only about wages. They are talking about only about wages. But no, the parliamentary panel has gone beyond only wages and has talked about multiple other things as well. So these are the three things, important things that have been recommended. In addition to this, remember there is a committee as well, Anup Satpathy Committee. Anup Satpathy Committee, back in the year 2019, this recommended that the wages that should be provided should be fixed at 375 rupees per day under MGNREGA. You can use this committee recommendation to improve the quality of your answer. Right? So these are certain points associated with this MCQ. Consider the following statements. 3 statements are there. Have a look at them. How many of the statements are true? Do let me know in the chat section. If not, I will give you the key answer after some time. Couple of more small articles now. Kisan Kavach. What is this Kisan Kavach? The farmers, whenever they are applying, let's say, pesticides, there are certain cases or there have been certain reports where the farmers have come in contact, that is a skin contact with the pesticides. So pesticides essentially are chemicals. So when your skin comes in contact with chemicals like this, there can be burns. There can be, right, multiple issues that are detrimental to your health. So what can be done? One recommendation that you can provide is using Kisan drones. I hope you understand this. Using Kisan drones, you can address this kind of a problem. But in addition to this, now the Department of Biotechnology, the DBT, has created, right, basically Kisan Kavach. They have created something called as Kisan Kavach. That is essentially, it's a suit that has been developed by the DBT, PPE kit, similar to PPE kit that was used very much during the periods of pandemic by the healthcare workers. So similar to a PPE kit, now there is a Kisan Kavach which has been developed by DBT. The price of this is 4,000, and this can be used by the farmers to protect themselves whenever they are, right, let's say applying fertilizer or other chemicals, etc. in the farms. Right, so these are certain points regarding Kisan Kavach. Next one is Manipur SIT. Just factual information. Based on the order that was issued by the Supreme Court of India, there are 42 SITs which have been formed by taking the police personnel from different states to conduct investigation and charge file sheets regarding what has happened in the Manipur in the recent times. These 42 SITs are investigating into, let's say, the murders, the rape, right, cases, etc., or even arsons, etc., and they are conducting investigations and filing charge sheets. This report or this newspaper article simply states that just 6% of the cases, just in 6% of the cases, the charge sheet has been filed. There is a need to, right, work on this. There is a need to file more and more charge sheets. Right, done. This is one article. And finally, the last article. After this, I'll take up your questions in the form of comments that you have given in the yesterday's session. The trade shocker. The trade shocker. Right, what are the important points? In yesterday's newspaper, there was one article, although not very important, but to a certain extent, information you need to understand. What are the important points here? Yesterday, the reports basically stated that the trade deficit of India has expanded. The trade deficit has increased to one of the highest levels. But much more concerning Because please understand, trade deficit, generally India experiences trade deficit. But much more concerning out of all of that was the exports for the month of November, and all of this data is for November. The exports for the month of November have come down compared to what it was in the month of October. October reported a steep increase in the exports that have been done by India. But in the month of November, it has come down. It is a cause of concern. Reason being, exports during the year end, because this is a festival, this is a festival time, right, for Western economies. Exports during this particular quarter, that is for third quarter in India, generally increase. And the government was very happy regarding the October data. But suddenly in the month of November, our exports have shrank, have come down. And on the other side, imports have increased. On the other side, imports have increased. As a result of this, the trade deficit has widened. Okay, the trade deficit has widened. Point number one. Point number two, if you look at this particular data, dissect the data, you will realize that the imports have been driven by some of the commodities such as gold. The gold imports have increased. Government of India basically said the gold imports have increased because in India also there is a festival. It's a festival, right, let's say duration. So people will continue to purchase lot of gold. Point number one. Point number two, the government also said you do not have to be worried about imports too much. Reason being, a lot of these imports are used in manufacturing of exports to the Western markets. Right? Is it okay? You will import, use it as a raw material, right? Let's say input, and you will export. That is the argument. But on the other side, your exports have come down. I hope you understand. Your exports have come down. And specifically within these exports, the labor-intensive exports, this is important. The labor-intensive exports such as gems and jewelry. Remember this. Gems and jewelry are considered to be labor-intensive, especially from the state of Gujarat. So these labor-intensive exports in the form of gems and jewelry, they also have come down. Is it not a cause of concern then? Right. So these are certain important points regarding the trade data which was published yesterday in multiple newspapers. Done? Right. So these are the 13 different articles. I've supplemented these articles from Hindu with other articles from different newspapers as well. Now let me give you the key answers for 2 MCQs. Consider the following statements regarding PM Kisan. It's a centrally sponsored scheme. No, it is 100% funded by the government of India. The funds are transferred into the bank accounts seeded with Aadhaar. Yes. All the farmers are covered under the scheme. Absolutely no. Those farmers with a piece of land are covered under this. Okay. So only 2 is correct. Right option is option A. MCQ 51. CPI AL is published by MOSPI. Wrong. It is published by Labour Bureau. Remember this. This is published by Labour Bureau. Right. Labour Bureau functions under Labour Ministry. I'm talking about Bureau, and UPSC will ask you question on Ministry. You will simply tell me that, sir, you did not tell me the Ministry. So it is a Labour Ministry. Center decides the wages under the section 6(1) of MGNREGA. Yes. The wages under MGNREGA are linked to CPI AL. Yes. Right option is option B here. Now, before I close the session, like I announced yesterday, if anybody has a doubt regarding economics, I asked you, please put it in the comment section. These are some of the questions. I believe all the questions regarding the economy that I've picked up. Sir, kindly define GDP in simple language. Define GDP in simple language. My dear, GDP simply refers to the market price of all the final goods and services which are produced in a particular economy. For example, let me make it very simple because you asked, define it in a very simple way. Imagine this is a final good that is produced. The students in my class will understand the importance of Parle-G. So imagine this is one final good and this is the second final good, one of your other favorite gems packet. Now, just before or even before some of you say, sir, you're using only food products. I'm already hungry. You're making me more hungry. Let me take another product, let's say Vicks and a marker here. So let's say these are the only 4 final goods which are produced in India. Let's say, okay, only 4 final goods. And what do you mean by final goods? These are not purchased for the purpose of reselling. It is purchased for the purposes of consumption. So imagine these are the only 4 final goods. You will put them in the basket like this. And now I know some of you will basically say, sir, why are you using plastic? Plastic is not good. It is not biodegradable, etc., etc. Don't worry. I have a solution for you as well. Right? Let's say you will take these 4 final goods, put it in the basket like this. It's a cloth, by the way. What is the market price of all of these? What is the market price of all of this? My dear, that is called as GDP. Right? So the definition in a very simple way is the market price of all the final goods and services is called as GDP. Okay. Next one. Sir, usually increase in capex of government should lead to crowding out. But in India, exception says Shamika Ravi. Why? My dear, until unless you do not tell me what is the context which is this article, I will explain this. But it may not be the same as explained by Shamika Ravi, the columnist. Argument is simple here. The government, whenever they spend money, capex, capital expenditure, it also means they borrow money. When they borrow money, the interest rates in the market will increase because the demand for money increases. And when the interest rates in the market will increase, private sector company will be worried about higher interest rate. They will not borrow. They will move away from the market. That is called as crowding out. But in the context of many countries, in fact, this was quoted by Economic Survey as well. Economic Survey says India, it is not always crowding out. Why? Imagine you're a private sector company. Now, right, you look at the government. Government is borrowing more money and spending for development of infrastructure. Will this not increase the confidence of the private sector? Will this not, right, make or increase the animal spirits of the private sector? So private sector will start spending, investing more, right? So this is the counter argument to the argument of crowding out. Okay. What is the difference between FPI and FII, right? Or FPI and FII, foreign portfolio investment, foreign institutional investor. My dear, foreign institutional investors are essentially financial institutions. They are part of FPI or they are subset of FPI. FPI is a larger term. FPI simply refers to all the foreign investments that you can think of, non-resident investments that you can think of, which will go into, let's say, stock market. It could be individuals, it could be institutions, it could be government as well, right? So FPI is an umbrella. Under that, FII will come. Next, explain Tryphon dilemma, right? A very peculiar question because generally will not come across the Tryphon dilemma in GS paper 3. Tryphon dilemma simply means it's a dilemma. It's a confusion between one country so as to should they protect their domestic interest or should they worry about international interest, right? What do you mean by this? Let's say hypothetically, the Federal Reserve, now it is in a dilemma. Dilemma in the sense, if they change interest rates, they will change it to protect the domestic market. For example, they might change interest rate to protect the domestic consumers from inflation. But if you change interest rate, will this not have an impact on the currency value? That is the international interest. So that's a dilemma, right? This is called as a Tryphon dilemma. Okay. Sir, thank you for this good initiative. Explain near and rear. It is very confusing. My dear, a lot of the students generally get confused between near and rear because they try to read it. This is one of the times I am telling you simply memorize it. Why? Near and rear both are indices. You do not have to calculate both of them. The calculation is also not easy. For example, Again, I myself am worried to write the formula because I know some of you look at the formula and have a mini heart attack there itself. NEER basically is represented by a formula like this. NI is equal to 1 within the bracket E upon EI trade weight. This is the formula for NEER. And what about the formula for REER? REER formula is written like this. Pi NI is equal to 1 within the bracket E upon EI, another bracket P upon PI, whole bracket trade weights. Now, many of you will look at the formula and simply say, sir, the only reason I did not pursue mathematics in my, let's say 11th and 12th standard was, it was difficult. I shifted to arts. Now, you want me to calculate using these formulas? Absolutely no. In a nutshell, please understand. Don't worry about the formulas, by the way. Do not worry. But a hint here. NEER basically an index comparing value of domestic currency with basket of foreign currencies along with the trade weight. And REER compares trade competitiveness. Simply remember this. NEER, both are indices, both are published by RBI. NEER compares a rupee against basket of currencies. And as the value, index value keeps on changing, you will have a significance of that regarding NEER. And REER represents a trade competitiveness. Is your export becoming more competitive or less competitive? That is the meaning of REER index. Okay. Next, why the value of rupee is changing in recent times? My dear, it's a very complex issue. The rupee value will keep on changing because of inflation, because of imports and exports, because of the confidence of the investors in, let's say, the Indian market, which might drag investments into India or take investments out of India. So there are multiple reasons like this, as a result of which rupee value will keep on changing. And finally, how to prepare economy? I cannot tell the answer to this in 2 minutes because that requires a very comprehensive discussion. How can you prepare economy? I will tell you this. Start with NCERT if your fundamentals are weaker. If you feel NCERT is difficult, then I would recommend Tamil Nadu Board Class 12. Be very careful. It is a very bulky book. Build on your fundamentals. Take one standard book, any one standard book. X author, Y author, Z author, doesn't make difference. Only one standard book. Plus, I cannot emphasize this enough, focus more on current affairs. Update your current affairs. More current affairs you can understand and remember, your preparation will be so stronger. Right? And finally, keep on revising and appearing for multiple tests. Right? So this will be my strategy, right, regarding economic preparation. Done? So these are the various important articles as well as the concepts I wanted to discuss with you people in this, let's say, lecture today. If you like the initiative, do hit the like button. If you're yet to subscribe to our channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day. See you tomorrow sharp at 10 a.m. again.